I'm exactly the woman Toronto needs. Vote Dion Renee on election day.
Which is the operational budget variance for the Toronto Police Services Parking Enforcement Unit. And it is, the deputation is from Dion Renee. Dion, 5 minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute warning.
Just for clarity, I'm not sure, did you guys approve the draft, item number 6?
Would you please, we received that, and
You received it as the
Yeah.
report wrote, even though it said draft and it wasn't an actual report?
do you want to speak on this item?
I just wanted to be able to follow.
Yes. So thank you
And
very
there
much.
was no amendment to
You have
correct the
five-
wording on that.
You have 5 minutes.
With regards to item number 6 that I had just asked whether or not the draft was approved as a report, the chief mentioned that when the question was asked of him about the reporting and the numbers, and when I pointed out the fact that police are required by law to offer issuing a receipt when they stop and question people, and the chief responded that it was the public education piece is missing. The problem that I have is that,
Dion,
nobody on this board
we are
raised
on
the issue
number-
that it's mandatory for police to first offer that so people can decide on whether or not they're going to receive it. And I'm not sure that this board is fulfilling its mandate under the law to understand what
Do you
its
want to
duties are
speak on number 16
questioning,
or not?
in questioning
Do
the
you
issues.
want to speak on
I'm
item
speaking
number
on number
16?
16. And to question the issues that are raised before them that seem questionable, it doesn't make sense. This is not a board that goes back to saying the public is not doing the job. This board is here to hold the police accountable as to whether or not they're doing their job. So when the question is asked, how can you verify that these things are accurate? You have a responsibility to actually challenge that. Every single person sitting here, when you have a woman sitting here, they're here to represent a full picture, but hopefully they can bring some perspectives based on sex or gender identity. When you have black people or people of color sitting at the table, hopefully that they're sitting here not to fill up space and sit in a seat, but to represent issues that specifically identify those issues from the members of the public that raise issues. When you have people who are transgender or from the lesbian or gay, transgender or bisexual community, two-spirited people, that those things are raised. I keep not hearing this board doing its job. So when we have this item number 16, and it says that the purpose of this report is to provide information on parking enforcement units when it's no longer under the perusal of the Toronto Police Services, I'm not understanding why it's even taking up time here today. Why is this here? Is there any distinction that any member of the public, any layperson reading this can understand its purpose if this is not under the responsibility of Toronto Police Services? Why is there a report here? Was it that it was previously part of Toronto Police Services? This is a historical data report. What is the purpose of it being as part of the agenda item here today? These things are not clear to the public as to purposes, identity, responsibility, accountability, who's asking what. I am not sure why this report is here when it's now part of the City of Toronto and their budget. Why are these figures here? Why is this 4-page document here? To take up time? Please. The point of why I'm saying everything that I'm saying is the fact that this board fails to ask the right questions of the Toronto Police Services. The board fails to inspire confidence in the public to know that you're actually doing your job, so that when we read this, not having to physically be present here to ask questions about it, but that we read this remotely on our own time, that we should be able to follow. When you pass the agenda item number 6 and nobody knows that you've passed it when it says draft and you pass it as a report, these things don't make sense. And moreover, again, going back to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, you've just asked for a motion to be put on the screen, but nobody read that motion out. The protocol should be that you read it out so that it's captured in closed captioning later on when it shows up on your archive footage, because anyone paying attention, even remotely viewing from home, I'm not sure that closed captioning shows in live streaming, meaning live time, in real time. So what I'm asking this board to stop failing the Accessibility Fund Ontario's with Disabilities Act, to be inclusive in its actions and to make sure that you're acting this way. You are to be the overseers of the Toronto Police Services. That means, in my opinion, that you have a greater responsibility to understand what the law is in order to ask the questions that you need to ask of this service, that they're doing their job. You've got the mayor of Toronto, the former mayor and questionably the mayor-elect for this new period, sitting at this table, and his responsibility is to members of the public, and I hear him failing to ask questions that are indicative of the questions that the public is asking. We've got members of council sitting at this table, elected by the public, and again, failing to ask the questions that the public is continually asking. What is the purpose of this board if it's only here to rubber stamp and not ask those questions, taking up time, appearing to do something, and not really getting anything done? I am curious about these things, but again, I'm wondering whether or not these questions are going to be directly asked by this board.
Any questions for? Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Renee.
I'm number 17. I might as well just sit here.
Okay, fair point. Any discussion on this item? If not, a motion to receive the deputation and a motion to approve the report. Councilor Nunziata, seconded. Mr. Jeffers, all in favor? Any contrary? Carried. Thank you. So, Mr. Rennie is right. The next one is item number 17, the Toronto Police Services Board budget variance, September 30th, 2018, and one deputation, and it is Ms. Renee. Again, 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 1 minute warning.
Again, I asked the question and nobody asked that what was the purpose of the report if it's not under police services purview. There's no explanation in it. And this board failed to ask that question for the clarity so that when members of the public look at a document that is not evident of its purpose, nobody asked that question. How do you all sit here in silence? You can't sit here in silence just because there is an action against this service with regards to the sexual assault committed by Jamie Party against me. You can't sit here in silence and act like I'm not acting on behalf of the public and raising the very questions that are continually raised both in media and social media as well. You can't pretend that. And you can't exclude me from this participation just because a police officer in this force sexually assaulted me. You can't do that. You have a report that's item number 17 in this document that says non-salary budget. This is a report that you prepared, Chair Pringle. And I'm questioning that we've raised this issue previously, I know because I raised it on the behalf of the members of the public, where when we talk about grievances against the Toronto Police Services, that the public actually wants to have an understanding of actually what took place. I understood when Shelley Carroll was on this board, and she followed up after I raised those issues. She followed up and said, well, you know, it is true that the members of the public want to have an understanding as to actions against Toronto Police Services, what has been paid out, and also what are the numbers of people appearing to challenge these things. And I know that there was a response that someone had said the concern was that you don't want to make it appear that you have money and therefore give people more of an opportunity to come forward and hold the service accountable financially. I'm not understanding your report either, Chair Pringle. I get it that it's supposed to be a variance report. The problem that I have is that a lot of paper is pushed by this service, and even if it's not paper, you do it digitally. A lot of information is pushed, but it doesn't seem to be important information. It doesn't seem to have an impact, again, with regards to clarity or definitions or distinctions or highlighting information that the public is actually interested in. We're not interested in you taking up time, coming here once a month and holding these meetings that you view us as audience members in. We're here to make sure that the public's rights and interests are protected. And it's not here in this physical space because we don't choose to be here. You force us to come to this space as a result of your failure to make sure that you're holding it in an unbiased atmosphere where the public can actually feel safe entering the space. So when you put together this budget and it's supposed to be a variance report, but doesn't really say anything, I'm not clear why you put these documents forward. And moreover, the idea to me where, and now my brain just stopped, which you're all saying, oh great, good, that means she'll stop too. Yes, when you have these various reports, I'm always concerned when you set a budget and it's 2 point some odd billion dollars, that whether or not these reports capture when you added on the moratorium of police being hired and then all of a sudden you hire them, I never see the follow-up to that. Maybe I miss it because it's somewhere deep in some of the documents, but I never see the follow-up to, you set a budget, you say what your needs are, but then you go outside of those needs despite you saying, no, we're not going to hire, and that you have a moratorium, and then Mayor Tory uses up election time to try to promote himself by saying, oh, we're going to hire 200 more officers for a specific period of time. But then that's not followed up in any documentation that we can follow as members of the public. I'm just wondering, what is the purpose of these documents if they're not informing the public, if they're not allowing the public to understand what's going on, and more importantly, to assess outside of our own observations as to whether or not this board is fulfilling its role? How are you ever going to turn around and say, oh, look, by the pieces of papers that you produce, that you're rightly informing the public of anything you're doing? That was the
Okay.
end.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions of Ms. Renee? Okay. If not, yes, okay. Yes. Go ahead. Yep.
Notwithstanding the slight mischaracterization of my own remarks, I do have a question that sort of is in that general area, perhaps of our Chief Administrative Officer, which is
Sorry, Mayor Tory, I can't hear you. Could you speak into the mic, please?
I'm speaking, but
I can't hear you.
okay. Well, I'm doing my best. I would like myself, and it doesn't have to be today. I find all the write-up concerning the magnitude of the departures from the police service and the impact that had on the salary budget, and the impact that in turn would have on the overtime, I call it overtime, to be unsatisfying, in that I can't, again, it's back to the same point I made earlier on today, I can't sort of trace it in sort of a waterfall kind of fashion to see what really happened, because it would strike me it would strike me two things. One would be good news and the other would be bad news. It would strike me that the number of people who left, depending when they left and so forth, would actually have more of an impact on the salary budget than will be the case by the end of the year. It also would have struck me that the overtime budget would have been higher than it was. So both things being as they are, I just don't, I actually did the math. I couldn't find you the sheet now on one of the pages where I divided the dollars that are short, the dollars we will not spend on salaries by the average salary of a police officer, and I come out with a number that's a lot smaller than it might be in the context of the difference between what we expected to leave and the number that actually did leave. Do you follow what I'm saying? And so the math just doesn't add up to me, and I'm sure it does add up, but I would appreciate your helping me perhaps between meetings. This is a variance report, it's not a budget, but it will help educate me for the budget, because these numbers to me don't add up at the moment. I think there should have been a savings somewhere that was bigger, not an intentional savings. The departures were all unexpected to some extent, or the number of them were, but I think the savings on the salary budget by the end of the year should have been bigger, just in eyeballing it. And the overtime looks like it's smaller. I'm not complaining about that if it is what it is. So I would just appreciate some further explanation that you might supply to board colleagues, because I think it's going to be helpful to us in assessing the budgetary situations we were discussing earlier on.
So I'd be happy to do that. I will point out very quickly that we did save $10 million. We're projecting to save $10 million on salaries this year because of the departures. that have taken place, but we also partially funded communication operators that we needed, and so we incurred expenses that weren't even budgeted, and our premium pay budget is actually over by $17 million.
But I
So
thought it'd
that-
be over by more. Anyway.
Yeah, so that's,
So, thank you very much.
So, thank you. That was back to item number 15, but on item number 17, if there's no discussion further,
Services Board. I missed my chance.
would we be, may I have a motion to receive the deputation and approve the report? Councillor Hart, seconded. Mr. Jeffers, all in favor? Any contrary? Thank you. Mayor Tory, I think your comments are a good one, because it is a time of considerable dislocation, and I think we will get back to you with the clarifications on that. So that is items through 17. That takes us to 25.